everyone. Today I have Fayad one more time. Sorry, Fayad. Can you tell a little bit about yourself and company that you're working for right now?
Yes. Hello. My name is Fayad. I work for a leading health insurance company in Abu Dhabi. My experience is system analyst, business analyst, project manager, most recently product owner. I have an education background in computer science engineering, and as you can see, I've been at business analysis and consulting for quite a while. A little over a decade is more accurate to say. Primarily, I've delivered a lot of projects, big, small, transformational ground-up systems in a variety of verticals, but my main area of focus has been human resources, and most recently for the past 5 years, almost 5 years, it's been health insurance.
Mm-hmm. So currently you're working for insurance company in Abu Dhabi, correct?
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
Health insurance,
Health
to be
insurance.
specific.
Okay. Is it important?
It is important in a way because health insurance is a little bit unlike all the other insurance because the sensitivity is more because it's more regulated than the other types of insurance verticals, and the amount of operational work that is involved in health insurance is considerably higher because let's say you have life insurance, you basically at the expense of sounding morbid, you expect someone to die before you can get into a claims process. Similarly, accidents and anything that has to do with force majeure, it all culminates only when there is some kind of critical situation that warrants a claim. However, health insurance, anything as simple as a cold, you go to the doctor, the process starts there right up to, I don't know, organ replacement, transplant, fertility treatments, prolonged chronic illnesses.
Mm-hmm.
So health insurance has one of the widest array of complexity when it comes to insurance. That's why it's important.
Mm-hmm. So I think that for you and especially for your company, it's very important to have health insurance experience and background before you can start in. Behind the hood, you need to have this experience in health insurance. So it would be better for business analysts and product owners to have this experience, correct?
It would always be better to have relevant health insurance experience. For example, when I joined this company, I had no health insurance background. Like I said, I came from a human resources background. So I had to start a little bit lower in the position than what I would have had if I went directly to an HR consulting company. Mm-hmm. And then you have to build your experience. I would say it's good to have a health insurance background, but it's not mandatory because there's the basics of business analysis. You say it's always the questions you ask, the challenges that you pose to your stakeholders, and the value that you derive sometimes makes you a more attractive candidate than someone who's been in health insurance for a long time. Mm-hmm. So there's also your personal, what you bring to the table personally can really tip the scales in anyone's favor.
Okay, correct. I agree with that. So we basically I prepared a list of questions, and not a lot of them you seen them. So
Mm-hmm.
This series of videos are gonna be called like a customer voice. So once you work for, so for me, you was
Mm-hmm.
like a client, right? And I want to ask some question which is important to me, and I think that it will be interesting when someone from the customer team will be sharing their pains and some important things. So let's I will ask one by one them. So
Mm-hmm.
could you share your most painful points between the interaction between customer and vendor team? So the most painful things.
Okay. Now I know that as a client side business analyst and product owner, I have been demanding, and everyone is, and I think you can attest to that as well. We were pretty demanding in our conduct and in the way we got the level of specifications that we got from you all in the business analysis stream. But I don't want to also give the false impression that everything that somehow it's too painful working with vendors. There's advantages and there's disadvantages to working with vendor business analysis teams versus internal business analysis teams. But because your question is specific to vendors, I'll just go through some of the points that I have in mind about what can be done to improve the, let's say, the alignment between the client teams and the business analysis teams that come from outside. So the first issue or the first, let's say, hurdle that I face with external BA teams is the lack of alignment in terms of the goals and objectives, or the values of the stakeholders. So a good example will be that a BA team is brought in to deliver a certain tool, a certain application, which is a small part or maybe a big part of the transformation the entire organization is going through. But if the BA team is more focused, they have to be focused on what they expect to deliver. But if they are more focused on just doing their part without having a better idea about what the broader goals and aspirations of the client are, then there's always a sense of lower value, right? So when you see the bigger picture, you're able to consult that much more better. And that's something that I've always seen with external BA teams to be the first point of friction, is that they don't see the bigger picture. And it becomes very frustrating for the stakeholder because the BA doesn't understand what they're trying to explain. It becomes difficult for the BA from outside because they're not getting their specifications signed off. So it's always a tug of war of that. So that's the first concern. And I think you can attest to that as well.
Yeah, of course. So let's recap on this. So when their team starts to work, the first thing that, it's better to get bigger vision of what you have to achieve on the customer side. Okay, good.
Absolutely true. And above that, you're able to also, let's say, talk to them about some problems that you're not brought in to address those problems. So, for example, purely operational problems. Or purely, most private companies have a problem with collections. So they keep following up with their clients and they don't pay them, and therefore it's a problem. So the external BA team is not necessarily brought in to solve this problem, but knowing that such a problem exists may give you the opportunity to suggest solutions that also address it, thereby increasing the value that the external BA adds. So always thinking about it from a 80-20 perspective, the 20% input the BA gives can actually resolve 80% of the customer's problem. So always knowing other pain areas can help you add to it. And also the other thing is when sometimes the BA teams are not able to ask the right questions or seek the right people out to ask these questions, or if they're not able to work around bureaucratic obstacles, it could be a problem. So this is another issue because I don't know, the organizations that I've worked with vary from small startup companies to corporate companies that I work now. So I've seen the entire ambit of bureaucracy, but I think you also know that some companies have a very lean structure, very little bureaucracy. You can just show up at anyone's desk and ask them a few questions. And some companies, you need to work your way through different hierarchical levels, managers, supervisors, team leaders, before you can get to the guy to ask them questions. So a BA needs to be tactful in working their way through obstacles and without feeling too frustrated about it. And that would really add a lot of value. And the other thing is ask for help when you need help, because there's certainly people within the company who can open doors. And as an external BA, you need to understand that you need the help of people on the inside to make your life smoother and to be able to meet those objectives.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have to recap, it's get the bigger picture, find out what other challenges the customer is facing where you can provide some value-added consulting inputs, ask the right questions and ask the right questions to the right people, and also don't hesitate to ask for support to circumvent bureaucratic obstacles.
Okay, good to know. Okay, second question. I have questions on my phone. So I'd like to know your own opinion regarding requirements gathering process. So what do you think how it should look like based on your experience? Of course, you know some advantages, disadvantages from the previous experience. So what is your opinion right now? How it should be, what kind of work should be done by customer, and what kind of work should be done by the vendor team?
Interesting. It's actually a very good point that you touched upon, because very often when external delivery teams are brought into the picture, it's with somehow the expectation that an external BA team and an external delivery team will walk in, they will listen to all our problems as clients, and they will magically just deliver a solution, and we can all say UAT, yay, successful, and we can go live. I mean, this kind of Cinderella story never happens. It's impossible for something like this to materialize. It's a synergy that we have to achieve as clients and delivery partners.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say to start with the client side responsibility, not to leave anyone out of the picture, is that the client side teams have to always push for deriving what really business wants and what really business needs by going through a methodical process. Something that I've learned in my experience is to drive this by processes, business processes, and by scenarios. So it's not something radical. I mean, maybe someone listening to this will say, okay, that's like the most boring thing that anyone told me to do. But that's the fact. I mean, you start with your basics. You observe a process. You say, okay, this is my process. This is how it's supposed to work. Now, what do I see? Sometimes by looking at the process, you can see that people are doing the same thing 4 times in the process. Mm-hmm. And that's cause for concern. You can already give an input about optimizing that. And maybe you see 4 different swim lanes in the process doing the exact same activity by looking at the standard operating procedures, which is also very good input to start off with. And then what you can do is, after you've done a quick review and analysis and taken some notes on the process, this is as internal team, what we can also do as value add is we can start defining the business scenarios that result in each of these processes playing out. So if I say that should a customer request for ABC and should request it in XYZ kind of let's say constraints, and if the management decides to do 1, 2, 3, then this is the process that has to be followed. Does the existing process satisfy this? Maybe it's a yes, maybe it's a no. And if it's a yes, what are the pain points? And if it's a no, why aren't we able to satisfy such customers? So if internal teams, business and business analysis teams are able to define this in a high level, that really makes the life of a delivery partner a little bit easier, because now they have a clear bullseye to hit. Their target is defined. They know what the pain points are. Now they can start asking more probing questions on why exactly something is a pain point and what exactly needs to be done for enabling the process. So this is something that the client team can do. But moving on, if you think about the vendor team, the delivery partner team, I would say that they have to start with this list of objectives that the organization seeks to achieve, the client organization seeks to achieve. And once they see that, it depends on the organization's maturity also. So for an organization like Daman, you have business analysis teams like us who vet the requirements or the objectives in a way to make it objective-driven requirements. But I can certainly say that you've experienced this in the past, and I have as well, that when you go in, the client already has some sort of solution prescribed that you're expected to deliver. Instead of telling you what the problem is, they tell you, I need a button here, or I need a screen here, and I need you to take this and send this email out through the system. Well, that's not the right way of doing things. So they need to be able to state their problems and their challenges. And that's where the tact of the external delivery partner comes in. They need to ask challenge questions on why, what do you seek to achieve? Because I can certainly give you an example from my experience. So we had one very demanding internal stakeholder who had insisted that changing a workflow system with 4 different data points and changing 2 decision points to result in a different outcome was more important. So this was in the operations department, where everything was following a linear process, and they said, no, we want to collect 4 more data points from the customer, and based on those 4 points, we need to be able to trigger a QA check and then send out an email sending a rejection saying this data was not clear enough for us to proceed with the policy. Now, needless to say, this is a very demanding stakeholder, and they had the solution right in front of us, and their impression was, here, we've given it to you, go ahead and implement it in IT. Well, it doesn't work that way. So it was very difficult even for us in the internal team to do it, but once we got into satisfying some stakeholders and bringing them into the picture, we were able to negotiate with them and tell them that this is not what you need. You need to be able to rethink your requirements for documentation upfront for the customer. So you make it clearer there, so the customer knows then and there that they're not eligible for something. So you don't need a third QA step in the process 3 days later to tell the customer that your request was wrong to start with. You need to be able to do this thing upfront. You need to have computational functional logic upfront to be able to tell the customer to fix their data. So this would have easily spiraled out if we had delivered the solution, and the customer would be complaining, saying, I raised the request 3 days ago and you could have told me then, but you're telling me after 3 days that it's wrong. And then 3 people from customer experience, 1 chief commercial officer, and someone from marketing would be screaming at IT for not delivering the right solution. So you can easily see the difference between a good, well-thought, level-headed business analysis being there in the picture versus that business analysis not being there in the picture. I think that makes it very clear. So do you have a follow-up question on that?
Basically, yes, because what I'm hearing for you that we need to teach each other. I mean, for example, in your case, you are internal business analysts who need to teach or must teach internal stakeholders like a marketing, business team to think more. How to say?
To think objective.
Think objective and create not just the stupid requirements for you and say that I don't care, I need that button, or we need to do it like this, etc. So my question more about vendor. What do you think? Should the vendor coach or teach the customer regarding the software development processes and how to develop, how to gather requirements? Because for me, vendor is a professional who has been working in software development like for years, but you as an insurance company, not professional in it. So should the vendor team when it comes to the customer, teach customer how to do it, how to organize requirements gathering meetings, how to gather requirements, how the workflow is going to be, etc., etc. What do you think about it?
It's certainly a good input because it depends on the maturity of each organization. So in our project, if you see, we had already everything planned out. There were already high-level requirements done, and there was a lot of precursor that satisfied the need, and therefore there was little need for let's say for teaching each other from that point of view. But I can imagine in my career in the past, I've also seen clients who didn't know anything about IT delivery. They certainly did not know that a position called a business analyst existed, and they always thought there's this Java guy who would walk in and just listen to me and do the application that I want. So that it depends, like I said, on the maturity of the organization, and if the vendor manages to educate, like you said, educate about IT delivery, about requirements gathering, and take it forward, then that just leaves a lasting impression on the client to say that the next time they have the need to do it, even if they could go ahead and hire 10 more people internally, I'm pretty sure if they have a very good experience with such a vendor, they're going to go back to the same vendor.
Okay. We can go to the next question.
1 minute, Sergey. Yeah. Before we move on, there's one other. There's a bunch of slides that I put together on what I think are 3 important parts of requirements analysis and elicitation.
Okay.
That any business analyst could benefit from, and I think you'd find it interesting as well. I'm requesting for control. If you give me, I can. Let me go. All right. Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, good. So this is just an introduction about myself, pretty much what I spoke about. And yeah, so this is one of the things that I'd like to explain about. So this is a stakeholder management metrics, which is an interesting tool because you need to know the stakeholder that you're dealing with before you can prioritize their requirements. And this metrics will help you derive that by plotting each of your stakeholders in each of these quadrants. So are you able to see my mouse pointer move?
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So the x-axis stands for the level of interest the stakeholder shows, and the y-axis for the level of influence that they wield within the company. So least interest to most interest, least influence to most influence. So if you look at the stakeholders, you have a variety of stakeholders, right? You have business owners, you have the C-suite, the executive level leadership, you have directors, you have business analysts like me, and then you also have end users. So they're all stakeholders for you. But then how do you prioritize the objectives from each stakeholder? And certainly each stakeholder's objectives could be different. For example, as a business analyst, I would say that the requirements documentation that's coming from the partner has to be a certain level. As a developer, they will also have their ask. But is that really all that important to comply over and above what the business owner is telling you that they need to achieve with this project? Of course not. And this tool will help you achieve that. If you see this, so the lower the influence and lower the interest, you just record their needs and you leave it in a backlog, so to say. So it will never get prioritized, but it's good to record it there because who knows, in the future, it may turn out to be an important objective. So that gives you the idea of what you do with, let's say, less important or less actionable objectives, right? But as you move up the influence ladder, you encounter this category of people who have moderate influence, which means they can influence the people higher up. And at the same time, they're least interested about the project. So every now and then, they're just going to give you a comment or tell you we should do this. And even if you don't do this, they're not going to be too upset about it because they just wield moderate influence. So, but it's good to just monitor their needs and consider if it is feasible because they sometimes can influence people with higher influence in the organization. So usually people who sit in this area are managers, supervisors, and line managers of that sort. And then you have people of high influence who are not involved with the project. This is typically the C-suite, like someone like a chief finance officer who really doesn't care about, whether the project outcome is good, but except for whether you meet budgets or exceed budget. and they generally have high influence in the project, but they have low interest. So what do you do with them? They don't literally come with a bunch of requirements. They just give you some high-level guidance from time to time. Just commit to what they need. So, for example, keeping within budget or following a procurement process or whatever. So that's one thing that needs to be done. Now let's come to the other area where the interest is high, whereas the influence is low. Now, if they have they usually have very good suggestions because they're very interested in the success of the project. What a business analysis team needs to do is to gather these requirements and suggestions and align it with those who are most interested and most influential within the project. And as you move up, the same thing happens. You identify the moderate influence people with high interest, and you also align it with people who have high interest and high influence. So if you design a matrix of sort and you plot your different stakeholders' influence and interest, you will see an interesting plotting on this across this X and Y axis, and you can easily identify who to really peg for when it comes to the requirements. All right.
Have you done this? Have you used this approach in the current project or not?
Yes, we have used this in the current project, and that's why we know the stakeholder who wields the most influence and who is also most interested. And I think you also know who that stakeholder is.
Yeah, seen them a few times.
Right, and typically your business analysts would fall in this area. They would be low to moderate influence, but they would have a high level of interest in the success of the project. And that's where the internal business analyst teams will sit. The person who is the product owner or the leader of the organization who has a lot of control will have a lot of will be plotted usually around here, and the project team is usually plotted around here. And someone like the CFO or someone who just attends a monthly meeting of the project sits here, right?
Correct. Before I move on, can I just interrupt for 1 minute? I need to get charger, okay? Just 1 second.
Okay. No problem.
Okay, I'm here. So what do you think? Will it be enough 15 minutes?
Sure, go ahead.
I said, so what do you think? Will it be enough for you to have 15 minutes?
Yeah, I think it's more than enough.
Okay.
The main portion of your question was this, so I'm just covering that off.
Okay, let's go.
All right. Without any further ado, let's move on to the next aspect, which is iterative refinement. I just put together this crude diagram. So a BA will usually start out with handwritten notes, have a defined requirement in Jira, and put it across to the stakeholders. This is usually what happens. But something that we need to be open for and we need to actually have a lot of interest in is the iterative process, where you get feedback from your customers and you refine this process all over again. So how does it look like? You have to build iterative refinement into the requirements analysis process, so it can happen during the elicitation session, after documenting acceptance criteria, after the business review, during the solutioning, and during test scenario review. So it can happen across any of these. And it's important to remember, as much as my technical colleagues will not like me for saying this, that solutioning itself is an iterative process. You need to be able to find solutions based on what the business needs. So it's not a one-way route out there. And whether this solutioning being an iterative process is adopted in an organization really depends on culture, maturity, and so on.
Okay.
The other input that I would give is about leveraging internally available assets. So they could use internally written BRDs, existing process diagrams, business processes, capability metrics like any of the architecture artifacts, any design thinking outcome that marketing can provide, product roadmaps by product owners. This is all interesting input that you can actually utilize.
That's interesting. Thank you for you prepared that stuff. I wasn't ready for that, but anyway, that's interesting. Yeah.
Preparation.
Yeah, correct. So once you mentioned this technical documentation on the last slide, I'd like to know that, so we have a lot of rumors on our internal market that it's very important to use special techniques to depict workflows. Especially people are talking about BPMN. So I know that in your current project you have a lot of integrations between different big system, internal, external. So you need to draw a lot of business processes. And my question is, what do you think about this notation, especially BPMN? How often do you use? Do you know? Do you need to know all those rules? How to draw those pictures when you show those pictures to other people?
It's an interesting question, to say the least. I know some people are very passionate about business process diagrams, and they can. I have, to be honest, I've done really detailed BPMN notation diagrams just because someone would not shut up. But I think that's overkill. You need to be able to apply tools as much as they need. So if you're doing a project for an organization that has a very mature business architecture process and an architecture function within the company, then you need to go the extra mile, because they're probably tracking the business architecture's maturity from existing architecture to transition to target architecture. But most companies, most small companies or medium-sized companies don't have such a mature process. So you need to be able to apply the level of detail. So again, I have just a few slides over there. So let me just throw that open. So for most requirements gathering sessions, simple flowcharts like the one that I've shown on the right as an example is enough. It's easy to read. It has no swim lanes, no complex gateways, and you can just define the actors who perform these actions using simple job titles like an accountant or a remittance release agent. So you can have all these simplistic notations over here, and this would be more than enough for smaller projects. However, you need to be able to scale it up. Let's say if they did tell you that, okay, give us a business process diagram so we can incorporate standard operating procedures into it, then you need to be able to bring about something like this, which has a high-level business process diagram, which is aligned with the business architect's vision, has swim lanes that exhibit different departments in the organization structure. And someone from marketing can look at this and look at it from the point of view of customer experience and user experience and say, this is good for the company or this is not good for the company. So as you can see on the right side here, there's two departments. There's a bunch of sales and estimation processes going on. So this is the next level of complexity, which is needed if the organization demands it. And the third would be something that is low-level functional process, which is the most complex, and where you define each complex logic in a business process notation, using complex gateways and showing functional logic within differentiating between automated system actors and manual actors. So that sort of thing is also reserved for an organization where the IT department is very tightly interlinked with the architecture function, and therefore they need something like this. So, but then it depends on whether the BA team always needs to do this. It really depends on the organization and the BA team's responsibility within the project, and also if the organization has nothing, then it's probably a good idea for the BA team to take some leadership and put this in place. So there is some structure for you to come back and do some changes, or for some other BA team to come back, or some other tech team to come back and do some changes. So you just have to gauge your client before you jump into this.
Yeah, I totally agree from my perspective that those two first slides that you showed is more than enough for, let's say, 80% of the project, from my experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Okay. Basically, I do not have any other open... No, I have a lot of questions to you, but we're limited in time. I saw that you have 2 more slides. Maybe you want to share something.
No. One is a thank you slide, and the other one is further reading the books that helped me in my career that I thought it would be good for me to share the same with some of my colleagues.
Okay, you will send me this list. I will put it under the video, so in description under that video. So
sure.
The last question I got from community, people interested about the how it calls. I forgot.
I think you sent me this question. Is it about what you would recommend people to do?
No.
When they work for a vendor team?
No. Yeah. So people ask about the cultural difference. Because here in Ukraine, people work mostly with Europe market and USA. But Arabic world is a little bit different. And the main question to you, from your perspective, is it difficult to work with people from Europe or USA? Is it any difference, cultural difference? What you can say on that?
The Europeans or Americans, they certainly have a very good work ethic from what I've seen. I can certainly attest to that. But there's also varying levels of let's say positivity in that. There's some companies that deal with a very strong incentive to help. Most companies do that. When we get companies from Europe and from North America, we had one, I think, from North America in the past few years that I've worked with my current company, and they certainly have the value add intention or the value add drive, and they're also considerably more expensive. That's the other factor. But I guess that's just part of doing business with the developed world. When it comes to working with companies from the local area, they can certainly be better understanding to your concerns, because we don't have to educate anyone about the recent challenges that's going on in the industry. They know very well, and that's why they have approached us to do this. And this is some of the pros and cons. But when it comes to, let's say, bandwidth, usually the North American and the European companies suffer a lot in terms of being able to ramp up their resources to deliver projects, because it's more difficult to get that kind of volume manpower in Europe when compared to, let's say, countries like India or Philippines, for that matter. So there's pros and cons, and it depends really on the scale of the project that you're delivering. If you are looking for a project where it requires 8,000 man hours and to deliver the project within a month or something like that, then definitely maybe hire some local consultants to get through the requirements phase as quickly as possible and outsource the delivery, the business analysis and delivery to some company in India. But if you're looking for something that's a niche product, like let's say a master data delivery or something like a very customized CRM delivery or something like that, then you should have more time to think through your sales strategy, and therefore you have more time to scale up. And in these cases, a Western company, a European company, or North American company would fare better. But then this is perfectly my opinion. I could be wrong.
Yeah, of course. That's just a talk between you and me as a small professionals in BA world. That's it, nothing more. Okay, thank you for your time, Fayad, for your answers, your thoughts, opinion. I think that maybe in future we could record some other video on the other topic.
No problem.
Yeah. So
thank you very much for the opportunity, and appreciate you reaching out as well, and hope we can do this again sometime.
Okay.